thinking about the young woman's question about the difference in the community and...
Oh, there's a huge difference between the community's relationship with the campus now, too. Especially African Americans on campus, I hate to say.
There's that whole town gown thing.
There's the town gowns thing that did not exist prior to 1965 here. Yeah, it's called towns gowns. In other words, there are the townspeople and then there's the campus people, okay? Majority of townspeople don't go to campus. They don't go to college. The ones here that went to college, I'm one of the very few ones that went to University of Illinois. Everybody wanted to get the heck out. But see, I had a history of people coming to University of Illinois. My aunts and uncles went to University of Illinois. You know, like I said, I had a great-grand uncle that went to University of Illinois.
You were on the island.
I had a grand uncle that went to university. Had a grand uncle and a grand aunt that went to University of Illinois. So, you know, we're talking about like there's 4 generations. I was the 5th.
So I just want to make one more comment that just for some of the federal legislation around equal rights had the impact of, while providing civil rights, human rights to African Americans, also had the impact of disrupting that community cohesiveness that Ms. Rivers talked about. People are very much even commenting. I heard Mrs. Bridgewater, who was at the meeting last night, talk about the impact of Brown versus Board of Education. And that Brown versus Board of Education has a current face, even in Champaign-Urbana and nationally, around this whole question of neighborhood schools versus charter schools
versus magnet schools.
Right. When schools were segregated, then all black kids were in schools together, and the families were all part of one school community. And then when schools became integrated, of course, black folks were dispersed to different schools, and so that whole sense of
and you lose a sense of cohesiveness and empowerment. You know, when you're in school and you have teachers that care about the information that they're giving you, and then they know your parents because they live in the same community. They go to the same churches that your parents do, and so they know the expectations, and the parents actually trust them with their kids. The kids learn a lot more. The kids understand the value of the education a lot more. When you break that up, then you're putting them into a hostile environment, because most of the time when segregation was happening, it was not liked, okay? And people did not like it. They didn't like somebody's changing the status quo on them, that there's strange people coming to their schools. The whole idea that, black folks aren't as smart, some way they don't learn as fast or they don't learn as well, and things like that. You know, when I was going to school, I went to integrated schools all my life. The school I went to was Lincoln, that used to be on southern part of Champaign. And I would have teachers time and time again accusing my parents of doing my homework, accusing me of plagiarism and stuff like that, simply because they assumed that I couldn't do it. Okay? And that followed me all through, even through high school. You know, that assumption that I could, there's no way possible I could be this. You know, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Well, I don't know how you're able to assess the situation in the community today, but with the loss of the relationship with the community, I don't know if you see that many youth here in the community, in the Douglas Park area, do they see themselves as having opportunities at the University of Illinois, of going to school there?
No, it's a very complicated problem that's going on right now, because there's also been another migration into Champaign-Urbana. And it's a migration moving out of the cities, being forced out of public housings and they're being relocated. Okay, so you have, last 10 years, you have a vast number of African Americans that have relocated into Champaign from Chicago, St. Louis, and places like that, okay, where they had been given a stipends to move. Get out of public housing, we're tearing them down. You know, so you tear down the high-rises, disperse the people. Okay, so they come here because they're given the money to come here and to set up housekeeping. They're not given any support. They have no connection to the community. They have no connection to anybody that's here. They're raising their kids. The high school students that you are dealing with now, or the high school students that you see around here now, is a combination of those kids and the kids that were here from the community. Okay, so there's a real big difference. The kids that was left in the community, a lot of them, like Monk said, they've moved out of the North End. Okay, they're moved away, so they're more assimilated into how things work here in Champaign-Urbana. Okay, whereas these people that have moved in, they have been marginalized into certain areas where they're living. Okay, and they don't have that, and they don't feel empowered. You know.
So for those of us who are dealing with these social problems and trying to study how we come up with solutions, you know, do you have any advice for how we address this changing community?
Well,
because it was just a very serious.
It's a very serious thing, a community change. But see, what you're dealing with is that you're dealing with almost two polar differences. Okay, you're dealing with a group of people that are coming out of a totally different environment than the environment of this community. Okay, they tore down the so-called projects in Champaign-Urbana. You know, they started tearing them down in the 80s. By the 90s, and so they were rebuilding housing up there. So the people have had more of an opportunity to begin to make that transition. The other public housing that was left in Champaign-Urbana was integrated public housing. Okay, except for there's one piece of public housing in Urbana that's right across from Douglas Park. But the rest of it was integrated public housing. Now you have another group of people that's come in and have been marginalized so that they're dropped into communities where it's almost predominantly them.
Something had to do with
You know, just to say, to be nice. So they are remaking what they are used to in Chicago. And they're responding to outsiders the same way they responded in Chicago and St. Louis and places like that. So that's what you're dealing with. So it's not an easy situation. You know, and there's no simple solution. You know, there really isn't, because there's not a whole lot of connection. In fact, we're finding problems within the kids that grew up in the community that are part of some of the families of the, so-called families of the community, that now they want to be gangsters, and they're getting in trouble, and they're not going to school, and they're not going, because that's more cool than being the way my parents want me to be. Okay, so you're having that kind of a problem that's happening here too. So it's kind of like it's a reverse. And the problem, the biggest problem is that the majority, the rest of the community doesn't see that subtlety. And it's not a subtlety, it's huge. You know, it's like blinking lights at you as to what's actually going on. But it's easier to look at the black community as a cohesive whole.